page, what pops. And with that popping is usually a throwaway line, and throwaway lines are usually at the bottom of a paragraph, hidden because, they're not important to us, but they could be and often are highly important to the audience.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Win the Hour, Win the Day. And today in the house, we have Sally A. Curtis. Sally A. Curtis is going to talk to us about repurposing our content because she is the content repurpose whiz. That's a good one. Welcome to the show, Sally.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Oh, excellent. All right. We're all about big results, no fluff here. So we're just going to dive in. And I even said to you, okay, Sally, we're going to talk about repurposing content. So listen, you guys, I got you. I hear you friends out there. I know what we're talking about. Oh no, then I have to take this blog and I have to repurpose it and it takes hours. So I said that to Sally, what's going to be different than other aspects? And so Sally had some interesting ideas. So let's dive in, Sally. Where do we start when we're repurposing content?
I think the easiest place to start when you're repurposing content is actually not to overcomplicate it.
Okay.
Everybody writes articles of some form, even if they're 400 words, 500 words, 700 words. They write articles, and the thing is to actually scan it, not get bogged down in rereading it and making it hard work, but scanning it intuitively and wait to see what actually jumps off the page, what pops. And with that popping is usually a throwaway line, and throwaway lines are usually at the bottom of a paragraph, hidden because, they're not important to us, but they could be and often are highly important to the audience. So I think it's content repurposing done it in its simplest forms is pulling out those little throwaway lines, those little tips, those little statements or quotes or rants that you have when you're talking or sharing with your audience, and actually turning them into a graphic visual tile. So the easiest way to explain to the audience what that is think of a postcard. A postcard's a visual graphic tile. It's small, it's bite size, and it's easy to read and understand because it's visually appealing, but it's just got a very good tip or message on there that the audience resonates with. And
okay, let me jump in here. So I'm thinking right after like a quote card, but it could even just be a tip. It doesn't have to be like one simple quote. It could be a smaller font. So it could be like you're saying a bigger thing, like a tip, not just a quote card. So a tile, is that a different fancy word for like a graphic quote card type thing?
It is. I could refer to it more as a tile because a tile has, when somebody thinks there's a graphic quote tile, they just shut themselves down to it just being quote.
Right.
Whereas
Yeah.
tile gives you flexibility. It can be a tip. It can be a do's and don'ts. It can be a, hey, here's a great saying, or it can be a question, or it can be just a visual that creates a sense.
Okay.
So a tile, in the sense of a tile, has flexibility like a postcard has flexibility. Whereas if
Right.
you think about a quote tile, it narrows people's thinking down and doesn't create possibility thinking.
Okay. I got it. All right. So, okay. Which reminds me too of, so, we're all about what we call, like, we believe that most entrepreneurs are just trapped in the web of admin. So we always want to be in what we call the execution mode, the win formula, 60% execution mode. And some of the things I found over the years too, is whether I'm on somebody else's podcast or anything where I'm talking, all of a sudden, sometimes I'll hear myself say something like, oh, I should write that down. That was somebody prompted a different answer out of me. And what I've learned from that too is I will then record, if I'm somebody else on someone else's show, I then also record my screen, and then my team will go through it and they will highlight things I said so that when they present it to me, I don't have to reread the whole thing. And even if they just take out the jibber jabber or this, that, or, and then focus on the key points, I read and see those differently than I'm like, oh, this is, because let me tell you 3 stories at the same time, Sally, pay attention, because it's kind of like when I had to read my book, the Win the Hour, Win the Day book, I then had to do an audio version. So you have to sit in a room and read your own book. And heaven help me. And I mean this with, humble bragging. There were points in there that I went to stop to write down. Like, that's a good point. Chris, you wrote that book. These are your points. But when you're reading them, when you're coming at you from a different perspective, whether it was because it's a delayed thing, I read it months later, or reading it is different than writing it, I don't know. But here I was starting to make notes as if I was reading it and I bought it off Amazon. I'm like, come on, man, like these are your words. So I think the repurposing sometimes not only allows you to get a lot more mileage out of it, but I think you see it differently.
And what you've just described there so beautifully is what I would call the inspired state. When you're actually looking at a book and you're not looking at it as hard work or your article or whatever you've done before, and you
Right.
start to see it through different lenses, and you're seeing, oh my God, that's a great statement. That's a great tip. You're actually in that inspired state, which is more intuitive or instinctive, and that's the state you want to be in because that makes it easy and in flow, versus when you think, sit down, right, I'm going to write, I'm going to do
Yeah.
content repurposing. You get into a methodical mode, which
Mm,
is often harder work to get the
yeah.
momentum with. So that's sort of the way of when you repurpose content well, it's done in that sort of playful state because you're looking through different eyes. You're sort of hunting. It's almost like a treasure hunt.
Ah,
You know,
right. Okay,
treasure.
that makes a lot of sense. You are absolutely coming at from a different the hunter versus the creator.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, which is how you read other people's books. Like you're like, "Oh yeah, this is okay, this is interesting. Highlight, highlight, highlight." Okay. Excellent.
Correct.
All right. So let me get out of your way and tell us some other things that we're missing, like that we're overlooking as far as what we could be repurposing.
Very much so. From a tips perspective, let's definitely go back to the throwaway lines, just to clarify what I mean by that, because it's very easy
Okay.
for me to say a throwaway line because I know what that means. A throwaway line is usually the very last thing somebody sums a paragraph up with, and it's usually the third paragraph. That statement that's a summary is a great statement to pull from an article or a blog, because it is actually a summarizing statement from the topic that you're writing from. So you've got your topic, which could be the title of your tile, and then you've got these little throwaway lines, there's often three of them, which you can then pop as your tips on a tile with a beautiful visual image. So, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
No, no, that's okay. I'll interrupt you. Lots. So I think too, for me anyhow, that tile keeps, you're right. I keep getting stuck on one little square thing like a quote and not realizing if it's a graphic and it's three sentences, we just make it a bigger tile. So that's fine. I think we are so narrow in our thinking. So when you say that, I'm like, oh, how do you fit all that in a little card? Well, make the damn gosh, oops, hello people. Make the graphic make the graphic bigger. So a tile, like I guess a tile in your house can be different sizes.
Correct. Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah,
I'm a slow
absolutely.
learner, but I'm catching on. Got it.
That's
All right.
quite all right. And from a repurposing perspective, I'll just add this little nugget because you've just reminded me in there. Obviously, different social media platforms have different size
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
tiles. The one that we use mostly is an Instagram style size tile, because
Okay.
that can be used on all social media platforms.
Oh,
Just make sure.
okay. Write that down, everybody. So
Yep.
use Instagram as your framework, and then you can repurpose that anywhere
You can
for the
resize
tile.
them obviously in Canva as well, but if you just want to make it quick, fast, and create a library of reusable assets right now, Instagram's the way to go, and then you can resize them later.
Oh, so you're going right into Instagram to make this tile.
No, in Canva.
Oh, and Canva with the
Canva.
Instagram size. Gotcha. Okay. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm keeping up.
Good, good, good. Now, I'm just going to share another tip as it relates to the graphic tiles, because we've talked around images, and I wanted to share the tip on the image positions the viewer. So you're going to have to listen in and lean into this one.
Okay.
So if you think of a graphic tile, and we'll go back to the postcard analogy, that a picture paints 1,000 words. We've all heard that before.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a quick story about a client. Now, I've got a client who is in the peak performance space, so high-end peak performance. Her overall statement or compelling statement is assess, don't guess.
Mm-hmm.
Now, her clientele are aged care facilities, senior executives, and world athletes, world champion athletes. So very diverse. Now, what I want you to do when I say those words, and I'll repeat them again in a minute, have a think about the difference in the images that come up. So
Uh,
I said, yeah, I said aged care facility, senior executives, and world champion athletes. So when I say the image positions the viewers, of course, we all have our own perspectives on life and our own life learnings, and our brain sorts based on our own perspective. So when she creates her tiles with her simple message, assess, don't guess, she uses the visual images to position the viewer. So if it's an aged care facility, for example, and they see images that are aged care related, they will stop and pause at the tile. This is all about stopping the scroll and creating engagement. But they won't see the senior executives and they won't see the world athletes because it doesn't relate to them.
but isn't that kind of odd? Like that's a real wide swing that most of us wouldn't have, because most of us would get stronger and stronger as we niche down. So I traditionally don't work with entrepreneurs that are new in business for a couple of reasons. So I'm usually dealing with people that have been in business like 5 years, service-based entrepreneurs, and they are working still harder than they expected to be doing this at year 6, 7, 8, right? And so I guess there wouldn't be a big variation in the images I'm using.
So let's go into the well, we use the word transformation. So if
Okay.
you're looking at tiles, for example, your audience are seeking, in your case, would be seeking a transformation. So they're stressed out, they're looking tired and fatigued, and all those sorts of things, and they're wanting to feel empowered, and those empowered on top of things, in control. So even those two images in themselves, depending on the wording on the tile, it could be, are you feeling stressed, etc. So you've got your fatigued looking person.
Right.
Are
Okay.
you looking for this? This is your transformation person. So that's where the choreography of good storytelling through images becomes part of the process when you're creating tiles. And the images, when you find a really good selection of images that are resonant and relatable and describe your clientele in an intimate way through those different senses, then that's again part of your reusable library, because you can reuse those images or parts of those images across the tiles as well. And that really helps to position the viewer and help the viewer sort and capture your content, because they go, that's me. They identify themselves within it.
So if we were doing that, if I was using a tile, let's say your business should support your life, not consume it, and then I have a positive image because we're not focusing on the stress right now. Would I use that? Would you suggest using that tile and then having a post underneath it, or is the tile the post and we're done?
So what I like to do is keep the tile as visually stunning and engaging as we can, which usually means an image or colors that invoke the right feeling, with simplicity on the tile of words. So if you come back to your quote tile, the tile itself is quite simple. And then you provide context in your short form copy that goes above the tile that supports it. So there's usually a little bit of context that supports the tile that you post
Okay.
on social media in most
Okay.
cases.
So a small post to go with that tile.
Yeah, a couple of, one or
Okay.
two sentences, if
Okay.
that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. All right. We're learning. Okay. So the image is the viewer. The money is the boring.
The money is in the boring. Okay.
Is in the boring. Okay.
Yep, the money is in the boring. This is comes from a story of a girlfriend that said to me many years ago, Sally. And when I hear my name 3 times, I know I'm in trouble. The money's in the boring. And it took me a while to sort of sit with that, but it really resonated, and I see it a lot with clients that I work with when we're doing repurposing. What it means is, as particularly service-based business owners or entrepreneurs and consultants, if they're in that sort of coaching or teaching or training perspective, we are often further down the journey than our clients. So we're often 3, 5, 10 years further down a particular journey that our clients are going on as well. and we get giddily excited about the new stuff that we've learned and our newest
Mm,
insights. And sometimes it's a higher level than
yeah.
what some of the clients are that we are bringing on the journey with us. So I like to share that the money's in the boring, to remind people that we don't want to dismiss the newest people on the journey and just only speak to the people that are right on the journey with us, because otherwise you're cutting out a potential new market or excluding a market that sits there with you. So the money is in the boring is to remember to look at the old material that you created when you started your journey, because it is
Oh,
absolutely gold to somebody else.
right.
But you
Okay.
start
I
there.
didn't know how that was going to land. I got you. That is interesting because so we focus on, like, we talk a lot about your win team, your what is next team, because you do need a team. And so often people think having a VA is a team, and it's not about the numbers. It's about the transformation of if work that you give that person. So often it's a very parentified system like the corporate world. So that's not a team. And then we talk about, super toolkits, which are really the key to having infrastructure, because without it, you're just a sufferpreneur. But something that we started out talking about in the beginning, we talked a lot about productivity, but I pulled away from it because productivity to me always sounds like, you've got a screw in the wall and you're just twisting it tighter and tighter. I misunderstood it for years. Like, I'm a recovering rushaholic. So I misunderstood it as going faster, being productive, like hacks and things like that. Whereas I have learned a lot and did a whole bunch of research on decision fatigue and attention residue and how the brain works and how you could take, as long as you put energy in play. It's kind of like, I don't know, if you were going to go do a race right now, competing, you wouldn't right before the race do 100 push-ups, like, because you wear yourself out, right? So I have learned a lot about how you organize your day really makes your energy effective. And it was funny, I pulled away from that. And then recently somebody asked me last minute to come in and do this big speaking gig for their company. And it was like 4 hours and they wanted productivity. And I forgot how much it really supports the other areas, but I left it behind because I'm like, you know what? I just didn't want to be this crazy, like, the people are showing you how to fold your jeans in the closet 47 different ways, right? That's just annoying, right? So, but I did leave it behind. And now I'm realizing, oh, it does need to have a bigger part than what I've been giving it. Cause I thought that is sort of, let's just skip that. It's, I don't want to be that productivity hack person. And so I pulled away from it. So I think that I deemed that as boring or annoying, and I glossed over it. So that's a really good point.
That's, I love that phrase, left it behind. And that's what we
Mm,
do. We leave it behind because we've gone on to the next evolution of what we're working on. And by leaving it behind, we're potentially leaving the audience behind that's
yeah.
resonating, that are ready for it right now. And they're the ones that we want to come on the journey because they become your new markets.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Awesome. You talk about too, I'm just all over the place to get some really good points here. Content comes in two forms: relationship building and revenue driving.
Yes.
Okay.
So they're phrases that came out of when I was doing some research around content creation, because content creation strategy is actually the most Googled term or phrase because people
Oh,
didn't understand what it was. And lots of marketers are doing that as well. And I found this explanation when I was doing some research. And again, I grab hold of things that resonate, that have got a good lesson in them for somebody. And relationship building and revenue driving are two very different strategies, but they work collectively together. It's like doing business development and marketing. Doing the two together makes
mm.
the magic happen. So relationship building is, if I said on the run, in the moment, it's the stuff that you post on Facebook, not necessarily the breakfast you had, but, out with friends or with selfies, doing the celebrating. That's the relationship building, the behind the scenes of Sally, or the behind the scenes of Chris, or
I
here's
struggle with that. You know what? I'm annoying. I jump up and go, because my team gives me grief over that. And then I think, okay, fine. And then I'll do it for like 3 weeks in a row. Cause I think I live a very quiet, boring life. And I look around and think, okay, what can I do here? Right. But I have noticed in the past, like I was like, oh my gosh, in the summer, I was like, listen, I don't do anything. I just work. I go like quiet and I go for bike rides. So then I posted, I was on this bike ride and I did like 25 kilometers. And of course, annoying was that everyone did chime in. I got a lot of feedback on it. So then that just reinforced my team. I'm like, because you feel like you don't do anything exciting. You're like, you know what? Well, I'm going to show you these cookies I made. Like, I don't have, I have clients where she's a designer. So that's always like, great. There's always something to show there. But when you feel, your life isn't that exciting, it's hard to scrounge stuff up, but you're right. It does matter. So the relationship building. Okay.
Yeah, I'll come, if I may just explain further on that as it relates to behind the scenes, because I'm laughing.
Okay.
I've got reminders in my calendar from my team to remember to do the behind the scenes stuff. And I'm
Yeah.
like you, I live a boring life apparently, and don't have so much. So what I did was I worked out what behind the scenes could look like.
Right.
Setting up different things, and then I spent half a day and staged it and took all of those photos and created a library of reusable assets.
Right. I just thought of that as you were talking.
Yeah.
I said, Chris, you should know better. I could do this. You could be like, sending pictures of here I am working out. Like you forget because I could be saying, here I am working on a new thing we added to the winner circle, right? I'm doing it, but I figure because I'm in front of a computer, it doesn't come off visually pleasing, but that's not the moral of the story. I'm not a dancer. It is what it is. Okay. Behind the scenes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Sometimes I always say to people, you forget what you know, like, I knew that and I forgot it. Okay.
Yes, totally. So I'd love to be able to do all those reminders. So literally write down a shot list of all of the things,
Yeah.
having coffee, reading a book, having coffee, writing some client notes, getting
Oh,
on an
you're right.
airplane with a suitcase, preparing for an event, doing a client onboarding process practice with a couple of images. You can take those photographs and then turn them into something later, but you can spend 4 hours just taking a whole heap of photographs and then it's done and you've got your behind the scenes. Then when you've got it really in the moment, like, hey, I'm here with Sally and we're drinking champagne because we've just closed a deal or whatever, then that's a selfie right then in the moment, and that is a right then scenario. But you can pre-plan some of that behind the scenes relationship building stuff.
You're right. You're right. We invited you on here just so we could tell you you're right.
Thank you.
I love when I tell people that. Oh, you're right. Oh, in case you didn't know and you're waiting for someone to tell you. I know nothing about what you're talking about, but let me validate you. Okay. And do you want to attack revenue driving?
I would love to. So revenue driving to me is where your help is the content that's directionalizing the journey. So when you're creating content and you're repurposing, if you've got something that you're selling into for the quarter, then you've just got to look at the content that you're creating that make sure it's supporting what you're selling for the quarter, or what you're promoting, or what event you've got coming up, etc. Whatever the thing is that you've got for the quarter, that's your focus, that's your big goal. And then create the content around that. But then when you're doing this little bit of copy above it, make sure you're directionalizing it or choreographing it or leading them on the journey. The revenue driving is all about the call to actions. Hey, we've got this event coming up. Would you like to join us? Or we've got a workshop, or we've got, what is the thing that they need to know is their next step. Now, sometimes you can include that within the tile, or it can be included above the tile. But the revenue driving is the giving them instructions of what's happening next or what they could do next. Download this document, join my mailing list. It's all those really simple phrases. Join my mailing list, download this, would you like to come along to an event? All those invitational elements, which are technically call to action, are the revenue driving things that we always forget to do because we get so excited that we've created a beautiful file.
I hear you. We only have a couple minutes left, Sally, because time flies with you. Could you, maybe your last point, we talk about opportunities or daily occurrence often hidden in plain sight.
Absolutely. So that's absolutely my favorite quote.
Okay.
I'll explain it this way. We have so much sitting around us. If I challenge everyone that's listening on the call to just sit there and look where they are, like I'm looking at cupboards right in front of me and I know that there's lots of stuff I've written or scribbled on, or images I've drawn. And if I look behind me, I know I've got at least 6 USBs that have got stuff on them. This is that stuff that was boring,
Mm.
stuff that we've left behind. So there's that stuff. So everything's sitting around you. It's just hidden in plain sight unless you have an awareness of it. So I want to sort of bring some of that awareness. And I'm going to say this: if you're somebody that does any form of speaking to build your business, whether it's to other people, to clients, to, doing Zoom sessions, etc., on average, I'm just going to tip people out of their apple cart with this little statement. This is where the opportunities are a daily occurrence. If you're doing a 45-minute presentation, then on average, that could be turned into a little short adding value ebook. There's the potential that it could be a half-day training, particularly if there's 3 great tips or takeaway.
Mm.
It could be 4 articles, and it could be 15 tiles.
Mm. Okay.
So
Okay.
we are doing stuff each and every day where there is opportunities, but we just don't have the awareness of what they are and what we can do with them. And we also, as human beings, tend to overcomplicate it. So I just want everyone to know there's stuff around you. Make it fun. Don't make it methodical. Do it instinctive. If you have a aha moment or a highlight, or you think that's a good idea, capture it. Because grab that little sucker by its legs and capture it. Record things, put it on post-it notes, whatever. Just capture it, because that's where the money is. Because if you've had an insight, it's an insight that'll be beautifully shared with your audience.
I think as we wrap up, I think the governing message I got from you, we've had other people here before and everyone comes from a different perspective. So in my mind, you have this, okay, here is my blog and I'm going to repurpose it. And here's the formula, do this, and you'll get 3 weeks out of it. And it sounds like work to rework the work you did. But I think your bigger umbrella of message is you have more content than you realize. And you're just not, you're not creating it. You're not looking at your inventory, and it's everywhere. So don't make it a work thing. It's like you already have it. Just grab a piece and do something with it. So I think you're coming at it from a more inviting perspective than I've heard before.
Yeah, it's one sentence, or it's a sentence with 2 little tips.
Mm.
It's not paragraphs. It's not reworking. It's not re-editing. It's
Yeah. Okay.
what's
Okay.
there. It's literally nearly literally copy and paste.
Gotcha. Sally A. Curtis, where else can people find more of your brilliance?
I'm absolutely active on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me, and obviously my website as well. But if you just Google Sally A. Curtis, you will find me.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate you. And everyone else, we will see you in the next episode.